Well, good afternoon, Scott Baker, and for the first time, hello to Emily Blackburn with us
Hi,
today.
great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I guess that's good when you say for the first time because kind of the whole topic today. So the field note for today that we're talking about on Lead Better is integrating new team members into the social fabric of the organization. If you're keeping count, and certainly you are, this is field note number 1594 that we are discussing. And I was trying to think, Emily, how long you are newer to the organization than me or Mikey, but I couldn't remember exactly when you joined us. But this is not part of the hazing process.
Yeah.
We're not like, yeah.
Not at all, Scott. No, and I think that's why I was so excited to see the topic for today's field note because it feels particularly poignant for me. But I will have been at CRA 3 years this coming
Yes.
April. So it feels like forever in the best way. But I think that's due to my excellent onboarding, you might say.
Well, and that was kind of going to be my point, which is I don't think it was ever bad in the organization, but I do think, from my understanding, that it got a little better and more sophisticated as we were growing by the time that you were onboarded. So now you've had a lot of experience, you have a lot of depth of knowledge here. So I don't know how deep we want to go into how good did the CRA Admired Leadership onboarding go, but I don't think we hurt you, right?
No, I don't feel hazed.
Okay.
It's
Good.
not a blink twice if you need help
Yeah.
kind of a situation.
It's like you got on board and you moved quickly. Now,
Yes.
I think when I came into it, and I came into having been coached by the founder and then put into the leadership practice, and we're sort of a little more Lone Ranger-ish than our strategic side.
Right.
And I would say, I did have like moments where I thought, I'm lost and adrift and all alone, like where I was like, maybe I'm not any good at this. So it took a little while to find the right magic combination. So I think that's the magic that we want to unpack here is for everyone. We know people tend to hang around organizations where they feel connected, where they feel part of the social fabric, and how do we get better at that?
Right.
Yeah, it's weird that we're not using the word onboarding in the title. Do you think there's a specific strategic reason for that? Right? I like
Buzzword?
the way that we talked about it. Yeah. But,
Well, I think it's one thing to be on board a ship. It's another thing to be a part of the team, right? A part of the crew. So I think there's probably some nuance there that we're trying to get at. It's not just being in the organization; it's being a part of the organization. That's really what we're getting at.
right. And so the faster that happens, the faster people actually feel a part. So that's an interesting KPI to bring to whoever's in charge of onboarding, is to like how fast does someone actually have a BFF inside the firm is a great way to kind of think about it. So assigning that ahead of time, is that a successful way to do it? Right? There's such stodgy titles for it. I wonder if maybe if we loosen that up a little bit and call it, instead of a sponsor, a BFF. that actually
No, I'm going to quit the organization. If you
out.
start assigning BFFs, then I'm out. Yeah.
Right. No, if we did that, the BFF would need to stand for something else. It needs to be a clever acronym for something other than best friend forever. But
Yeah.
If so, that'd be great.
I think of it as almost like a Sherpa, my guide,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Like navigating the ins and outs. What's the political capital here? What are the ways of working? Who are my need to knows? Who holds the keys to the kingdom, right? Who's the person that's going to effectively guide me to success? And that's a little bit more than what a sponsor role might play in my mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and intentionally doing it in an informal way, right? Because if it's too formalized, then you might not feel like you have the freedom to be able to like kind of let them know how the politics of the place work, right? And some of that might feel a little gossipy, right? But the way that you kind of roll that out is what makes you feel like, oh, now I really understand how this place works.
Right.
Well, one of the things I would ask, because I like the Sherpa metaphor, and there is a procedural part. Like, here's how we're going to get up the mountain. We're going to do this, then this, then this. But in the field note itself, which, by the way, onboarding is the third word in the actual field note. So you were not left out in your onboarding orientation, Mikey. But it gets to this idea that in each organization, there's what it calls a unique code, right? And And I think that that's something that kind of plays to this intangible, right? There would be processes and procedures, and here's where you get your card to swipe, and here's what happens in the lunchroom. But Emily, how does that work at this sort of little more sort of intangible level where it's like, this place is kind of like this, and you probably couldn't describe it in an actual document from HR.
No. And you know what, Scott? I think it boils down to, especially when you're newer to an organization, you don't know what you don't know, right? Until you get to these series of impasses and you're like, this is new. I didn't interact with this at my previous firm. It's that permission to ask the stupid questions, the dumb questions, as it talks about, as having a safe space that you can go to help understand what are the rules of the road, what are the norms here. And you're right, it is intangible. There's no way to put that on paper because it's constantly evolving too, right? And so it's important, I think, the selection of who that Sherpa, who that guide is so critical to this process, right? Because you want someone that really has a deep understanding of the organization.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that is concerning here is that it's probably more challenging for a lot of organizations where you have some people in the office and you have some people that are working from home. You have some people that are on time, sort of, alternate times. And so it becomes even trickier to make people feel part of the fabric. And we know from the research that, like, in some studies, like half the people that leave because they never felt like they clicked with the culture. They didn't have that. The field note is saying leaders need to be more mindful about not letting this just happen by chance, like actually putting some thought into how they get people together. But you can't force the chemistry of a connection. But you can sort of say, I always like the Seth Godin line about culture, that people like us do things like this. And we're going to be here to help you understand what this is like.
Yeah. I was playing with Alex ahead of our chat today and talking about the field note, and they, them, he, she provided me with an interesting words. We should think about onboarding not as a dating app. You don't swipe and hope for the best, right? You're pairing people. It's an arranged marriage. You want to pair your incoming employee with the right person internally to set them up for success in the best way. And that's not a fingers crossed, let's hope it works out kind of a situation.
So let me ask you, if we have to make some decisions about who gets paired up with who, and we determine that in our organization, maybe it's best to not have that person be on your team, like maybe intentionally.
A different group.
Right. So that maybe that allows you to be a little more frank in your discussions, right? Because it doesn't feel like you're getting involved with team politics as much as you're just trying to explain organizational politics. But then when you look at your pool of people, there doesn't seem to be a very good personality matchup with the type of person you have. So which of those things takes precedent, right? It's an interesting thing to say. How do we actually make those?
Well, I think we made a big mistake, because that was one of the problems when we were onboarding Alex as a new colleague. We paired Alex with Mikey, and that's just, it's been really, you can just sense the tension.
I'm just trying to make Alex make mistakes all the time.
Okay, yeah.
Every time I interview or interact with Alex, I just try to make him mess up.
The one thing I would say, and to Mikey's point, and this is just my editorial opinion, but Emily, you've worked inside of way more organizations at a deeper and more thoughtful level than Mikey and I have, is that I don't think you have to make sure that there's this perfect chemistry match, or it's like, I do think that building relationships and feeling belonging is there, but we're not. You didn't actually get adopted into an actual family. These are professional workplaces, right? So that there's a degree of, like, we like you, you're here for a reason, but it does need to be oriented around what we're actually trying to do, and not so much about like, oh, you like Vietnamese food, that's great, like so do we. It's not quite at that level, right?
Right. And
how do you keep it professional?
I should caveat my original metaphor that it is more than just personality, right? It's your goals for what you want that person's success to look like in the firm or in the organization. So, Mikey, to your point, if there's not someone outside of the team that feels like they would gel the best, maybe that's okay. Maybe you pair them with that person anyway, but maybe it's a question of what you need the most from that incoming person. Do you need them to be a highly effective member within a team, working on a team, a great partner, a collaborative partner? Then maybe I would pair them up with someone internally to that team. If you need them to branch out of their comfort zone, meet people across the organization, say it's a highly stratified organization, there are a lot of remote employees, then I would prioritize pairing them with someone outside of your team, right? It's all about what you need most from that person in terms of their developmental path and what's going to make them most successful at the firm.
Great. Now, even though this field note was written like to a leader point of view, I kind of felt this on my own to the point where when I was reading through the field note for the first time, I thought, oh man, this nails me exactly. like what the way I feel connected inside of an organization is this way. And so I've realized that like I've positioned myself to do my own onboarding in this kind of way, whether or not the organization was going to be doing this for me.
Because you're that kind of person.
Right.
When we first arrived in this neighborhood that we live in right now, we stood back and waited for about 3 weeks to see who was going to come and say, welcome to the neighborhood. Exactly. And it didn't happen. So 3 weeks after we were here, we made the cookies and we went and delivered them. And we found a clever, like non-passive aggressive way to say, we're just saying we're welcoming ourselves to the neighborhood, right? And so we did that. And in a lot of ways, I found myself like the organizations I've been to before, I've needed that kind of person because I need that kind of context to really understand how to operate someplace. And so finding that BFF very quickly, that's what I would think of it as, is something that I put myself through that, whether or not they were. So I wonder if there's a lot of people who do this kind of thing as it is, and maybe we should like tap into like what it is and how they do it in order for us to figure out how to institutionalize it best.
And Emily doesn't know this, but unfortunately for Mikey, I was the only person at Admired Leadership that he knew. Yes. Of course I'm now clearly on the anti-BFF sort of stand. So, that's where it all got messed up. But right. So take us though into, I don't know if there's a scenario, I'm not forcing an actual anecdote to pop out, but when you look at organizations and you kind of feel like they've got some problems with onboarding, these folks are really good at this, what are the characteristics you start to see about what you've seen work and what you've seen that hasn't worked?
Yeah, the pessimist in me will go to the negative situations first, but I think something that we see time and time again is new employees almost becoming ostracized because they don't have that person, that Sherpa, right? There becomes this dynamic externally of, oh, they don't know how we do things here. That's not how we do things here.
Yeah.
They're new, they don't get it, right? But there's no one to metaphorically hold their hand and bring them along and say, this is how we do things here. Right. There's the element of role modeling that is so critical. And I think that's so often missed within organizations. Now, on the flip side of that, I think positively speaking, and not to pat ourselves on the back too much, but I experienced a lot of this in our onboarding experience at CRA Admired Leadership, but we do force those connections early on. Say, here is your peer sponsor is the term that we use. And that's someone that's going to have your back, that's going to make the introductions that you need to be successful. Now it's on you to schedule the meetings and to have those conversations, right? But we're going to lead you to where you need to be successful on your own. And we're going to do it early on so you're not lost at sea for too long.
Yeah. Right. And that's really helpful. One thing I want to ask about just in terms, this isn't maybe directly in a theme in the field note, but see if it resonates. Because I've read and studied and thought and tried to apply in this organization and others, an idea that is when you understand what is really working in your own culture. What are the characteristics of the kind of people that really are the best folks that just exemplify everything? That when you understand that, when you're actually recruiting, you actually sort of know this is the kind of person we're looking for. And when you describe during that job sort of talent match position, this is what we're like, you're going to attract, if you've got that thought through better, you're going to attract more of the right people, and you're going to repel the people that you didn't want anyway. So that maybe as you think through the values of what's really working well with who you already have, that will make that onboarding process so much easier because you're much more likely to have found the right kind of person. Does that make sense?
100%. I think the clearer that you can be about the values that you have and stand for as an organization internally, and the sooner you communicate that externally with potential clients, with potential candidates, with potential talent, right? This is who we are, and this is the type of culture that we're going to try to grow. We want to try to grow. You're going to have people self-select out of that process. And oftentimes it's for the better.
Dynamite.
I'm adding to our view recommendation from our
I see. Yeah.
trusted community member David Morris, who says the ropes to skip and the ropes to know.
I have never heard of this book.
He says it's an old book, but it's a good one, and it's
I like the
something
title.
that he read in his second year of practicum of grad school. But it's filled with both anecdotes and theory that are blended in a way that people will really enjoy. He also says don't buy it on Amazon because it's way too expensive there, but to get it over on Abe's Books.
Insider tips. Love it.
That's a good pro tip.
Great.
Emily, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me both. It's been great.
Thank you. Bye now.